even as a kid, I had a sense that the world wasn't quite the way we were told it was. Like there was more going on beneath the surface. And by my late teens, I'd already started questioning things more seriously, like history, politics, power, not obsessively, but just enough to feel that some of the official explanations didn't quite add up. But there was one moment that took that curiosity and turned it into something much deeper. So, just after I turned 20, I was working double shifts, split across a couple of local gyms. And then one evening, after finishing a day shift at one and arriving slightly early at the other, I was in the swimming pool doing a few lengths. And then out the corner of my eye through the poolside window, I saw my mum standing there at the reception desk, which immediately seemed strange because she wasn't meant to be there. So she'd actually been out for the day with my dad and my younger sister and some family friends. But suddenly there she was, looking panicked and frantic, like something was seriously wrong. So I immediately jumped out of the pool and rushed through while still dripping wet, wearing just my swimming shorts. And then when I reached her, she just collapsed into my arms and said, "Dad's gone." Then she told me that she'd just come straight from the hospital and that he'd had an allergic reaction to something that he'd eaten while they were out. And he'd then had a heart attack, collapsed, and shortly after that, he was gone. So in that moment, it was just total disbelief. I remember thinking, this can't really be happening. You know, it felt like I was trapped inside a nightmare, hoping to wake up any second, but I didn't wake up. And what made it even stranger was that growing up, I'd had recurring dreams of that exact same thing happening. So when it finally happened in real life, it just didn't feel real at all. So I quickly got dressed and told the management there that I couldn't work that night. And then we drove to the hospital. And once we got there, we walked down the corridor and into the room where I saw my dad lying on the bed, face up. But here's the thing, he looked like my dad, but he wasn't my dad. And when I leant down to kiss him on his forehead to say goodbye, what really struck me was the coldness of his skin. It just hit me in a way that I really wasn't prepared for. And I've never forgotten it, and I never will forget it. So, in that moment, something inside me shifted, and I realized in the most visceral way possible that whatever my dad truly was, it wasn't in that body anymore. That body had become an empty shell. The man that I loved, his voice, his humour, his presence, and that life force was no longer there. And I know this might sound really strange to say out loud, but in that moment, for me, it was obvious. And suddenly, I wasn't just grieving, I was asking myself questions that I'd never had to ask before, such as, what are we? What leaves when someone actually dies? And where does it go? So the next morning, I went with my mum to buy some flowers. And I remember seeing people walking past, you know, laughing, joking, chatting, buying coffee, just, you know, going about their normal day. And then the most surreal thought entered my mind, which is that, don't they know what's just happened? Don't they know? Which, of course, looking back on it now, it sounds completely ridiculous because, of course, why would they? They didn't know us and they didn't know my dad. But in that moment, another realization hit me, which is that you can walk past someone on the street at any moment and have absolutely no idea what they're carrying inside them. And that's when something else began. So, over the months that followed, my curiosity accelerated, and not in a neat or organized way, but in a completely desperate and obsessive one. History, politics, philosophy, religion, money, power, how the world really works. And some of those rabbit holes were dead ends, some were distractions, and others felt deliberately confusing. But a few contained fragments of truth, pieces of a bigger picture. However, some of the people around me at the time thought I'd completely lost my mind, but the truth is, I wasn't chasing theories. I was just trying to make sense of something real and to understand what I'd felt in that hospital room, how my dad could be there and not be there at the same time. And unfortunately for me, due to youthful naivety, I thought that searching for answers meant speaking about it constantly to most people I knew or met. And in all honesty, I think I totally overloaded myself, like an old computer running too many tasks at once. I just kind of mentally froze for a while, even though on the surface I was still completely functional day to day. However, slowly over the years that followed, something began to form, and not necessarily the full truth or the whole picture, but enough pieces to finally make sense of something I'd always felt as a kid, which is that the world that we're shown isn't necessarily the one that actually exists. But there was never a single aha moment. It was more like a river, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, but always moving. So losing my dad didn't just break my heart, it cracked open my perception of reality itself. However, some things that I believed back then, I don't anymore. And some things that I previously rejected, I now understand and accept. And that moment, standing beside my dad's hospital bed, was where my curiosity turned into an obsession that I just couldn't turn away from. So, if any of what I've spoken about here resonated with you, please feel free to leave a comment. I'm Andy Gates, and this is Between Worlds. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.